Welcome to a new episode of Books and Beyond from the Winter Park Library, recorded live in the recording studio at the library in beautiful Winter Park, Florida. In Books and Beyond, we have conversations with writers, musicians, artists, presenters, and other contributors. Most of our guests have appeared live at the Winter Park Library or will be presenting soon. We hope you'll subscribe to the Books and Beyond podcast and that you'll stay up to date with library goings-on at winterparklibrary.org/events. That's winterparklibrary.org/events. I'm Michael Werner, and I'll be your host for our interviews. Enjoy the show. Hello out there, library patrons, readers, and smart people everywhere. This is Michael Werner, your host for the Books and Beyond podcast. And before we get started with today's guest, I just want to mention a couple of things. First off, if you don't know, there is a wonderful page at the Winter Park Library website where you can find a listing of all the events for that month and the subsequent month of things going on here. It's winterparklibrary.org/events. And there are, as you may know, there are over 100, sometimes 150 events every month, everything from children's activities to authors, writers, well, I guess that's the same thing, authors and writers. Authors, writers, musicians, magicians, I mean, you name it, there is somebody here speaking at the library about a topic that they're probably going to be interested in. And that sort of leads me into our guest today. He has a very interesting background. I'm here with Gary Gorman. Welcome, Gary.
Hey, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Gary is a resident of Winter Park, has been in Winter Park, I think, for many years, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that. And Gary is a triathlete and a swimmer, a runner, and a biker, and he's going to tell us about some of his life events and what he's been involved in. And the reason we have Gary here today is we thought it would be a little different having a patron of the library who's very, very involved with the library come and talk to us about his life. So, again, welcome, Gary, and thanks for coming by.
Well, thank you, Michael, very much, and thanks to Jeremy, too, for inviting me today.
Yeah, Jeremy is the public services librarian, and he's also the editor and producer of the podcast. We like to call Jeremy the vice president of podcast productions. He shies away from that title, but that's what we like to call him. So, again, Gary, thanks for coming. Before we get into talking about some of your athletic exploits, just talk a little bit about your life, where you came from and how you got to Florida and what's been happening aside from your athletics.
All right. Well, I was came out of Ohio.
Okay.
And I have always ran and swim and biked from a very young age. And when I came down in the late 60s to live here with my family.
Here to Winter Park or?
Orlando area.
Yeah.
And when I came down, I just continued that, and the weather was great for it. And I started doing some competition, primarily through running, which was this was prior to finding open water swims, those kinds of events. So after a period of time, you saw a little bit more variety in terms of distances and things in Central Florida. And then, of course, we had the growth of Claremont and the interest in doing triathlons. And I sort of moved in that direction, but at the same time, I took on some longer challenges and kept the variety going, which probably helped me.
For those of you not familiar with the sport or maybe not from Central Florida, Claremont, Florida, which is maybe, 30 miles from Orlando, something like
Correct.
that? How did that happen? It's sort of the headquarters of the triathlete world, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did that come about, Gary? Do you know?
Well, that's a good question. Very interesting. And I, having grown up here before that really existed as a oasis for triathlons, you could just see it evolve. But during the late 60s, prior to Disney, there was some demand for water ski instruction, etc.
Okay.
And they sort of found some locations out there in the chain of lakes And Ski Nautique, which was producing boats, had some taught
Okay.
instructors who could then take those talents and those abilities to safely drive these speedboats, and which Disney would eventually become part of using those persons. And then there was a period when you had the Seminole County or Claremont area, or people wanted to become involved in activities, be known for their sports centers, sort of lifestyle. And Claremont really jumped in a big way. And today is probably one of the most noted places to participate in triathlons.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I got off the subject a little bit. You were talking about your life and how you got involved.
Sorry.
No, that's my fault. How you came to Florida, and let me jump back a second though.
Yeah.
What drew you to swimming and biking originally as a kid? I mean, it just happened, and you just loved it, or?
I think, Michael, that's a fair statement. I mean, in my very early years, let's say, I just did it. I would go out and run, and I loved swimming. I didn't, as I said, I was born in Ohio, so we didn't have a lot of ability to find places to swim, but I just never lost interest.
Did you swim in school?
No,
No.
we didn't have. My school that I went to was very small. It was a parochial school, and we didn't really have any facilities. We didn't have a track team. We didn't have anything. And after high school, at college was my first chance to really get involved in some of these and do my sports classes. And I took a couple courses with the swim coach at the college that I was going to. And that just really broadened me out in terms of stroke mechanics, and I also really got involved in teaching swimming, and I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it, and the running was pretty much the same.
I'm not sure if it's true, but I think maybe, and you would probably know this, because near my house here in Winter Park, there's an older home that has a pool, and I'd heard that at one time it was actually the pool for Winter Park High School. Do you know about that house by chance? It's over off of Corrine.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Because that's a big school, and they didn't have a pool,
Right,
even,
right.
at the time.
There was some swimming activity through some of the swim teams, like the high school teams and stuff, that used the Rollins facilities for a while. And Dinky Dock was a big public location for people who wanted it. Aquatic
Which
education.
is on Lake Virginia, I think.
Yes,
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Right
Okay.
next to Rollins.
Yeah.
But
okay.
they would teach a lot of swimming in that lake.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's jump forward a little bit.
Yeah.
You've been swimming and running and biking your whole life. Probably other sports as well too, but those are the three that you spend most of your time with.
Yeah.
You're involved in a number of events and activities, not just here in Florida, not just in the United States, but around the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So each year, I'm setting up my races that I want to do. I like to keep it interesting, so I have done things like the ultra runs through the Everglades. I've swam around Key West.
Let me stop you right there, Gary. An ultra run through the Everglades. Come on, man. I mean, there's all kinds of alligators and pythons and everything out there, right?
Actually, there were. You could see them. We ran on an easement, an old train easement, which is elevated with two ditches on the side, where you could see the gators just lying as you ran through the park itself.
Yeah,
it was great. It was
and how
fun.
long is that? The ultra?
Well, they vary. We just had one recently that used Katy Wade Trail that some people were doing, 50 or 100 miles.
Okay.
That particular one was 50, as I recall, to do the Everglades.
Okay. All right. And then, okay, so,
Did
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then like the swims around Key West that I mentioned too.
Well, yeah, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that.
Hmm.
That is a 6 mile event, I think. It is
It's 12 and a half miles.
12 and a half miles, okay,
Right.
around Key West.
Right.
And so how long does that typically take?
It took me a little under 6 hours, and you cannot. You start early in the morning,
Okay.
and in my case, the distance that I chose, I had to have. You have to have a kayaker
Each individual swimmer has to have a kayaker.
if you're going to do the 12 and a half miles.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And you cannot put your feet down. I mean, once you get going on
Right.
your race, you swim on the Atlantic side of the island, which is pretty rough and choppy. And then as you head towards the south end of the island, the depth, it gets quite deep, and there's a little harbor in there, so it's a little rough down there too. Then you come around and you're on the back side of the island, and you're actually swimming in the Gulf waters, which is a little bit less current and
Okay.
a little more shallow.
Okay.
All that time, you are permitted to stop. People will ask me, can you replenish? And you can. You can get some water.
When you say stop, you mean like tread water or floating?
That's exactly
okay.
right. Yeah. And you can't touch the kayak. You can't touch the person that's paddling for you. You can't hang on the kayak. You can't do anything.
If you do, that's
Yeah,
you're
you're
eliminated from the race.
disqualified.
Okay, disqualified. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that probably was, or seems to be in my own head, the toughest challenge I ever had. You come out of the water and your motor skills on your arms, they feel like they want to just keep swimming,
Really?
stroking automatically because you've been doing it for so long,
Yes,
pretty much
yes.
nonstop.
Yes. And is that an annual event?
It is it's the Key West Men's Athletic Association. The year I did it, I think that was about their 40th year.
Wow.
And then I changed and went to the Key West Community College's event, which is almost as long. They do operate the same thing. But they had something that, for your listeners might be interested, they had more variety in terms of you could swim a variety of distances. You could swim with as a team.
Okay.
So it was good. They were throwing out a bigger net to get as many people who could and wanted to, but didn't feel comfortable doing the 12 and a half mile
Okay.
distance.
And do both men and women swim together, and all age groups swim together?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Men and women in age groups, but you start at the same time.
Okay.
And then I think for children, maybe you had to be 15 or 16.
Oh, so younger people are doing it as well then?
Yeah, down to about 15
So
or 16.
young high school
Yeah.
kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And
That's quite an accomplishment. Just
yeah,
in and of itself, that one.
when I did that, I think I was 66, 67, and 68. I did it for 3 years in a row.
Okay.
And I placed in first in my age group. So
Okay. And if I may ask, Gary, how old are you now?
I am 75.
Okay.
Now, when I talk about that, if that topic comes up, I might say that I'm 76, and it's not that I'm confused. It's just that in the world of USAT, the world of triathlons, you actually, for ranking purposes, you compete. You have to age up a year.
Oh.
So you're.
Why does that happen? I mean,
They want to rank me and my fellow teammates, competitors, in a particular 12-month period, so they can rate you, and so that it gives them
I
as
see.
much fairness to us who are racing by age group.
So if you're just about to age out of 75, by saying you're 75, it wouldn't be equal. Yeah. I got you. Okay. to talk a little bit about the difference between most of our listeners, if they swim at all, they probably swim in a pool. If they swim in a relatively warm pool.
Right.
Talk about that versus swimming in open water.
That's a great question too, because it's a stumbling block for a lot of people who want to tick off that box and do a triathlon. There aren't, too many seasons that go by that discussion about, well, I like it, but I just don't want to get in a lake and swim. I can't see. I don't know what's swimming in there with me. Blah
Right.
blah blah.
Right.
But you get used to it, and you get comfortable with it by repetition. And you have to use your head. I mean, there are certain places you don't want to be swimming in, overgrown banks and stuff like that. You might even know places where there's no activity in terms of alligators, or there aren't any in a particular lake. And,
Right.
you have to be smart about that.
Sure.
But
Sure.
by and large, that is rare that anybody has an issue. Always swim with somebody else, be safe, and know what you're doing.
Yeah. Whoa! Holy smoly! What does that mean? I think that means it's time for rapid fire Q&A.
Yeah.
And Gary, that's a little time when we're just going to ask you some questions to get you to know you as a person,
Okay.
not as seriously as a world famous athlete. We're going to get you to know you as a person outside of that. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you some questions, and if you don't have an answer, just say I don't have an answer for that one. Let's see here. Let me just pick one at random. All right, here's a good one. I think kind of related to your athletic exploits. What's your favorite meal?
It's a good question.
Not your favorite healthy meal, just your favorite meal. You can eat anything you want.
If I can eat anything I want, I'd probably be pizza and chocolate chip cookies.
Okay, great.
It's because I never eat them.
You never eat them.
So-
And we're going to talk about that in a minute after the rapid fire Q&A, because I want to know about your nutritional aspect of your
All
life.
right.
Is there some place, new question, is there some place that you'd like to go that you've never been?
I'd like to go maybe to New Zealand.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we're going to talk about this in a minute. I know you've been to Australia, but
Yeah.
you didn't make it over to New Zealand, I guess.
I didn't.
Do you have a favorite writer? Nonfiction or fiction, either way.
So many. I don't know. I think I'm going to pass on that.
Okay, all right. Maybe we can come back to that. If you
Yeah,
want to.
yeah.
Okay, Gary, you're a little over 20 years old now.
Yeah.
But if you could go back and ask the 20-year-old Gary Gorman,
Uh-huh.
or you give the 20-year-old Gary Gorman some advice, what advice would you give to the 20-year-old Gary?
If in terms of a long life is stay healthy, try and find some sport that you like, that you want to do, and just jump in and keep it up for as long as you can. I think a lot of what we see going on today is that people didn't think that older people like myself, could stay athletic for as long as we have been able now to push that bar. And everybody's different, and
Sure.
but to be active is really something you want to do.
Okay. So that's the advice you would give the 20-year-old Gary, and you followed that advice, I think.
Yep.
You just
Well,
very,
I
very,
tried.
very fortunate. Yeah. Do you have a favorite saying or quote?
Work hard, play hard.
Okay. What's a character trait that you admire in others?
Oh, jeez. Well, I like people to be, inquisitive and ask questions, and
Like podcast host.
yeah, exactly. You have the best job in the world. Yeah.
All right. Last question for you.
Sure.
And we haven't talked about your career outside of your swimming and running and biking. But you were involved in historical architecture, I
Yes,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, and if you hadn't followed that career path and you weren't involved in athletics, I know it's hard to imagine that world, but if you weren't, what do you think you might have done in life? What other path might you have chosen?
I think I would like to just been a adventurer.
Okay.
And I love the combination of the challenge of the physical and learn things by travel and
Which
you know.
you're in a story, you're doing some of that now.
Yeah,
and have
yep.
been doing that for many
Yeah.
years. Well, thanks, Gary, for playing along with us there
Thank you.
on those
Thanks.
questions.
Appreciate it.
So let's go back to life here. Let's talk about a little bit about your non-athletic life. So talk about historic preservation and what exactly you did and what does that mean?
Well, I went to for my master's degree to Gainesville
Okay.
and UF, and so my specialty was in historic preservation. One thing that I did, I worked for several firms, always kind of trying to juggle my sports life too.
Sure.
But I ended up on the island of Nantucket. This might be interesting to some people.
Yeah.
Because UF has a small program there that they operate.
Nice place to go.
Yeah, it was, and I was there initially to assist the director, and then I ended up doing a proposal. I ended up staying on the island for about 4 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, really nice.
That's pretty heavy open water swimming up there, I would guess. That's
That
pretty choppy.
That is not someplace you really can.
You can't swim. Really?
Not much.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
for long.
What did you do when you were up there all those years?
There's a
swimming-wise?
program there in the School of Architecture that is primarily aimed at graduate students. And they have a classroom building and, of course, exposure to the tremendous amount of historic preservation that's occurred on that island. It's like the perfect place to study.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. But Florida is your home now, and it has been
Yes.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Central Florida
Yeah.
has been your home. Let me shift the gears just a little bit because I think a lot of people, myself, and I think a lot of our listeners are probably going to be interested. Okay, here's a very athletically fit human, 75 years old, involved in some very rigorous activities. How do you eat? I mean, what do you eat, and how do you maintain the nutrition that your body needs to keep it going?
I don't eat a lot.
Okay.
But I know that I can eat kind of whatever I like because I do expend so much time on my training. What goes with this lifestyle of racing at my age? I mean, I spend a lot of time at training. For example, I'll swim usually about 7 days a week, and I may do four.
And are you swimming in a pool mostly?
I can swim in both. In the winter, though, I primarily am at pool. I swim here in Winter Park at Katy Way,
Okay.
and that's a metered pool. So that's really assists me in getting my distance. And I'll do about. Some days I'll do 3,000 or 4,000 meters.
And how many lengths would that be? I'm just trying to calculate that. That'd be because each length is 50 meters, right? 50-meter long pool.
Right. So it's 1,000 is like 1K.
Okay.
So
That's a lot. That's a lot of laps, my friend.
yeah, I guess it is. But it's my happy place.
Yeah,
And
sure.
same with running, and I can go out and I if other people are interested and want to take some of this information, that's one thing that's really good for you because it's not just about your physical, it's about your headspace, and
Sure.
you can get out there, and it's the really only place I know for myself is that I can just not think about anything. It just doesn't allow me to because I'm thinking about my stroke or where I am or how much more I have to do or something.
Right.
But yeah.
In a very small way, I can relate to that. I mean, I do a little bit of swimming, just some lap swimming at a local
Right.
indoor pool. And that the reason I swim is not the physical part, although I'm sure that's beneficial. It's the mental part. because it's almost like meditation for me anyway.
Yeah.
It's just stroke and you're meditating almost. Do you find a bit of that when you're working out?
I love to hear that, Michael, because really such a reward.
Yeah.
And it's not maybe what people would think would happen. But it is. It's a really place to calm down and just not hear all the noise that's out there today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise. Talk to me about some of the events that you've participated in recently. And I know you're involved in world activities, and I think before the show you mentioned you'd been in Australia. So talk to me about the team, the USA team, and what that means, and how do you get in that, and where you go, and yeah.
Well, as I said, I've had this athletic inclination from a young age, like many people, but I just kept going with it. But I have evolved in different aspects of it. The open water swims are an example. But when the triathlon concept first came to the United States, I think I did my first one in 1984. I thought, oh, this is interesting. I really like this because it was combining the variety of things that I like to do.
And was that here at Claremont, or was it somewhere
else? The first one I ever did was in Tallahassee at Florida State. There just weren't any, and there might be one in the whole year in Central Florida.
Okay.
Then they grew in popularity, and I did them and competed in them. And then because when you do a triathlon, there's usually a card that you would carry. It's a USAT membership. It's a cover for...
Which is the USA Triathlon Association. Okay,
mm-hmm. And so I would look out for races that were sanctioned by them because they're highly measured and everything. And then I got into the ranking system, which tracks me as an athlete, how well I do. And I was at the Miami Man triathlon, and they had an event called a aquathon, which is a combination of a run and a swim event. And so I pursued that, and after my first attempt, I found out I had been very successful with my time. So I got an invitation to compete in the World's Championships, and so for you're invited as a member of the United States team, and you represent the country, and you compete against the other countries in the world.
And the team is made up of all ages.
It is. It is. And I compete in my 5-year age group, whatever that is at the time. And this year, I've been fortunate to say that I came in first in the state of Florida in my event, mm-hmm. and first in all the rest of the United States in my event.
This is wonderful.
And that opened the invitation to go and represent the United States in Australia. So this
past year, where you were in Australia? Okay.
Yes. I competed, and I took third place, the bronze medal, and got on podium, which is really an honor to represent the States. And my two competitors that beat me were both Australian, so I didn't feel quite as bad knowing that was their home turf, and they're good swimmers. So, yeah.
And
it's a good year. I also was rated All-American, and will appear in a little blurb will appear in USAT magazine.
This is fantastic, Gary. I mean, it's great talking to you. I mean, I don't think I've ever met anyone in person that's quite as accomplished athletically as you are. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then this event is an annual event, the World Championship.
Yes.
What's
also,
coming up?
Going with the fact that I placed where I did, I'm given a slot for this year's World Championship, which is going to be in Pontevedra, Spain.
Okay.
And so you know,
And
you can.
when is that? Like in July or
That's in June.
June? Okay.
Yeah, and
What part of Spain is that? Do you know?
yes, because I raced there before.
Okay.
It's in a really beautiful place. It's more closer to Portugal in the country. It's not by Madrid
Okay.
or Barcelona, for example.
It's way south and east, west of Barcelona, down.
It's more.
Like Malaga, is that down around there? Or?
It's not too far from the Atlantic. That's the
Okay.
Atlantic side.
Okay.
You know.
So it must be close to Gibraltar.
Up a little ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really neat. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be over there this summer, so I just was curious. I might stop by and see.
Okay,
In
that'd
Spain.
be
Yeah.
great.
In June,
That'd
you
be-
said?
Huh?
In June?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, I know it's by where a lot of the pilgrimages are, the walking tours that go through the
yeah.
country.
Okay.
And that's popular there in Spain and France.
Yeah.
And just as a side, I also participate. The neat thing about that is you get a swim or a run in some really interesting locations. And a few years back, I was in Slovakia, and I would never have really imagined that here I would be swimming in Slovakia, but I ended up swimming in the Danube River. That's where they held the event. So to say I got to swim there was fun, but one of the real highlights of that was that just kind of quirky is I went to work out to train on the day prior to my races. And we were at the National Training Center of Slovakia, and the team was in the pool, and they were at one end, and there was one single lane in the middle, and I said, can I use that?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then on the other side of me was the elite team from the United States. So there I was doing my workout in early morning with the national team of Slovakia and the American team.
Oh, very cool.
The fastest of the fast.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a
Yes.
question here. We're going to wrap up soon with this episode. There's a Senior Olympics also, right? Does that include swimming? Do you know about the
Yes.
Senior Olympics?
Yes, it would.
Are you involved in that at all?
No, you can enter into that world through, as you said, like Senior Olympics. There's also master swimming.
A master, yeah.
And there's other avenues.
That's more like pool racing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The one thing about triathlons is they're always pretty much going to be. I've done maybe 2 in my lifetime that were held in a pool, and that was because they were really cold areas that didn't have facilities.
Okay.
But yeah, you're going to be swimming in maybe a river, a lake, an estuary, a bay, but they're open water.
Okay.
But you can do that. There's groups here that swim open water all the time.
And when you want to swim open water, you go over to the Gulf or the Atlantic or both? Or?
I was swimming in Lake Virginia
Okay.
a lot, especially
Which is right here in Winter Park, by Rollins College. Yeah.
When COVID was really present, and it was hard to get into pools.
Uh-huh.
But I swam in Lake Maitland. I'll swim anywhere.
If it's
there's
water, you're there, right?
Yeah.
Let me end the conversation, Gary, if I could, just get a little philosophical here for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give? I'll call us normal people, the normal people that aren't swimming every day in these kinds of events. What advice would you give us, just to let us think about life and how to keep going and motivate ourselves, and help me out there. What would you say to us?
Well, I guess I'd say be your own person, and keep interested in life. Challenge yourself. I'm a big proponent of staying healthy. I don't know if this is a result of this, but I don't take any medication at all. Thankfully, I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I think there are more simple ways, we can really take care of ourselves and have a good head on our shoulders. And, there are a lot of challenges when you get older. There's no question about it. It's not, a magic bullet out there. But stay involved. Doing what I do with so many other swimmers and people, that's inherently just a good thing by itself. Um,
You're around positive, active people
absolutely,
all the time. Yeah,
absolutely, and outside, and walking and bending and all that stuff that you don't really think about until you don't do it, and then you can't get off the sofa.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, Gary, I really want to thank you for being here.
Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Michael. You
And
were great.
Okay, well, thanks for being here. And I would like to encourage you, just as an aside here. I don't want to put you on the spot publicly, but you got to come and talk at the library about your sport and what you do. I mean, just sort of maybe expand a little bit on this, and come talk in the theater if you get a chance or you want to.
Well, thank you. And this has been something that we've discussed, and I look forward to it. Perhaps at the end of this season, when I'm back from my, my high training period and my big races at the World Championships, I'd love to.
Yeah, very good, because I think a lot of people would be inspired by your story and maybe encouraged to, maybe not do what you do, but at least step up their own game in whatever they're doing, whether it's art or whatever they're involved with.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks again, Gary. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Books and Beyond from the Winter Park Library. This podcast would not be possible without the generous help and support from the library staff, and especially from Jeremy Zorn. Jeremy's official title is Public Services Librarian, but he does many things here at the library, including producing this podcast. We can't do this without you, Jeremy. Our theme music is from the song Don't Go by Bovine Joe and the Buffalo Herd. That's Herd spelled H-E-A-R-D. We hope you'll let your friends and others know about this podcast, and that you'll come by the library for one of our offerings, which you can find at winterparklibrary.org/events. That's winterparklibrary.org/events. If you have questions or suggestions for the podcast, or just want to talk about Books and Beyond, please send an email to podcast@winterparklibrary.org. That's an email to podcast@winterparklibrary.org. Remember that the Winter Park Library promotes the free and open exchange of ideas and does not attempt to control or take responsibility for any opinions that may be expressed in this podcast. Opinions expressed in this podcast do not constitute or imply an endorsement or a reflection of the library's policies or beliefs. This is Michael Werner, wishing you well until our next episode of Books and Beyond.